That's right, friends. It's time to cinch up the 5-point and jump right into another episode of Corbetting with Chris.
Thanks for joining us with another episode of Corbetting with Chris. I'm here with my friend Luke Shuman, who's got a beautiful shop over in Spokane, Washington. Luke and I have known each other for the better half of over a decade plus. I've gotten to know him when he was working out of a garage, renting a small space, and now he's got a big giant building with all the fun and all the overhead that comes with it. So
lots changed since those days.
Yeah. I remember those days early on. How'd you get started? I mean, I know a little bit. I love your story about playing in a band, making some money, and turning wrenches. Like, how'd you get started in that?
Yeah, well, I mean, all the way back to growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, and we always worked on our own stuff because we didn't have a choice. And then I worked for a lot of years, 6 years at a auto shop, Sears Auto Center here in Spokane, and kind of got my feet wet in the studding tires and, changing tires, stuff like that. And then moved into sales. And one of my big clients was Central 4-Wheel Drive. They were down the road.
I remember Central over there.
Joe, you worked at Central at one point.
Yeah, Joe. And your seat is squeaky, by the way.
Yeah, I'm gonna not move that.
Squeak.
That'll be easy for me to hold still. Don't worry.
Joe, what was his name over there? Joe Artesia or
Joe Arastio?
Arastio.
Yeah.
I remember.
He was my
Joe.
boss, and so I was working, kind of managing their account when I moved into sales, and then they offered me a job over there, and I just hearing stories of all my friends off-roading, thinking it was cool, and I was like, yeah, that would be awesome. That's a way cooler job than selling tires.
How old were you then? What age we talking?
Oh boy, 18. I mean,
fresh
18,
out of high school,
19,
more or less.
Pretty young. Yeah, I started working there young. At Sears, trying to think of the timeline, but I mean, I started Hazzard when I was in 2009, and so somewhere in between there.
Nice.
And so worked at Sears for a while. Went over to Central 4-Wheel Drive, thinking it'd be a cool job, and it was a little more money. And back then, like $10 is a huge deal, and if you can make an extra $10, you'll make a job move for that, So, went over there and sold parts for them for a bunch of years. And it was a great job. I learned a lot and kind of learned the industry. That's like early 2000s. I mean, there was Pirate 4x4. We were obsessed with that. And we were, staring at that all the time. I had, a group of friends. We all went wheeling together as I built up. I had an XJ that I built up, not knowing any better. And, so we were kind of doing that thing, and I worked there and loved it. I saw the good, the bad, what they did right, what I, in my young, not knowing much opinion, they did wrong. And,
there was a lot wrong with Central. It was easy to,
there was
it was
plenty.
easy to pick apart. Partly the model didn't want to do any custom anything, right?
And, to be honest, their model was inventory a bunch of parts and install one little tiny install bay. And I think in the 80s and 90s, that was okay because there wasn't the internet where you could get parts. So you had to go to the off-road shop you needed a set of Nerf bars. You had to stock them for every truck.
Yeah.
Or order them from stuff like that. And these days, it just shows up.
It was very traditional mail order. It was very traditional mail order, right?
And so the biggest thing that I always remember is we always had we had one install guy. He was great. But what we do today is we have to have like 30 trucks here because stuff goes wrong every day, or a truck comes in, it's not what the guy told you, or a part is wrong. And then if you only have one bay, it's just a jam. And now you're moving a month worth of people back one day or 2 days or however long. It was this constant problem. And
it was that time frame really had, it was mail order, right? I mean, that was mail order and magazine. So what you saw in the magazine is what you called to see if you could get or what you could order. And, it was early in the interwebs day. So, that's kind of what
was not a lot there. And I remember, we looked at Pirate 4x4 all the time. And these days you can Google, if you have a question, you Google it. But back then, pirate 4x4'd it, like
Yeah.
we were
Yeah.
figuring
Yeah.
stuff
The
out. And
NAXJ page and Pirate and, all
Yeah.
these other, cheap forms and everything. Like that's where you got your information to back up what you saw in the magazine, whether it was good or bad.
Well, and you're reading every magazine and you're looking at it as it's the coolest thing. And if you could only have a vehicle in a magazine, like that was the pinnacle, and
yeah, it really was.
And yeah, Central was great. And we did a lot of really cool stuff there. And there was like a defined line for me when King of the Hammers was starting. This is like an '08 and it's all over Pirate and we're talking about it. And I got a buddy that bought a LS2 at the time and he had like this old tube chassis. I was helping him kind of put it together when we could after work. And like King of the Hammers was the coolest thing that had come into the off-road world.
Was that what kicked you to get out and do your own thing, or what was it?
Partially, because it was cool and new and exciting. And I remember talking to, the owners, like, hey guys, this thing is big. Like I think we need to do something here. And they were like, nah, I don't know. I don't think it's that big a deal. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go down this year on my own dollar. Do you want me to like bring a Central 4-wheel drive banner? No, don't worry about it. Like, I'm like, okay, whatever. Well, me and my buddies are going to pile in a Suburban and 6 of us with a rooftop carrier and throw our junk on top and see how cheap we can drive down there and back and see what it's all about. And so we did. We went down there and it was the craziest of times. We had the best time ever and a lifetime worth of stories in 1 week at the Hammers with 6 dudes in a Suburban, waking up to an inch of silt that's blown through the tent fabric on you in the morning, like a hungover morning with sand in your mouth. And
always fun.
Just, but it was awesome. We watched a ton of cool stuff and I came back like just fired up about it. And
so coming back without getting fired up, was that coming back, getting fired up that you wanted to do more buggy work?
No,
like that was the fabrication.
I was fired up that it was been a big thing and like, let's get Central involved in this. But I'm also, in '09, I'm a 23-year-old kid. I'm not like, I just have kind of ideas. I'm spitballing. I don't really know much about life or the world. You're living off Wendy's chicken sandwiches and, cheap beer. Like that's just what you were doing,
Yep.
And, so I came back and I was like, we need to do some more fab stuff. And they, of course, weren't set up to do that. And I'm like, well, I'm going to do some of this stuff after work. Cause like I get customers in here all the time that are like, I want to do this thing, but it requires a little welding. Do you have a guy? And I'm like, no, I don't have a guy. So I don't know what to tell you. Like that was kind of our thing. It's like, I
know exactly what that, because it was the same way over in Everett when I worked there. And, that would have been like 99-ish, 2000. It was 98, 99 in there when I worked for him. Same thing. We would bolt on, at that time it was Super Duty, right? So a guy'd come in, we'd do QS, Stainless rockers, set of Smitty belt Nerf bars, whatever it was. But there was always the guy that was like, hey, can you weld these tabs on? Or, hey, can you do this? And we didn't have that guy.
Yeah.
We would send him down to, it was a welding shop of some sort.
Same. We had like the industrial welding place, like, stick weld some junk on your truck. And it just like over and over, I'm like, okay, there's a want here. So I had a buddy of mine had a Spokane water knife, owns a water jet and, into off-road stuff with us, has a bunch of Jeeps and we were always wheeling together. His name is Tom and we were doing stuff. He's like, why don't you cut some tabs and see if you can sell them at Central 4-wheel drive, like to help people out. So I started Hazzard Fabworx and I was selling Central 4-wheel drive, like little $1 shock tabs and things, because at that time you had Warrior. You could buy like a pair of shock tabs.
Yeah, out of Oregon.
$6 or something, and we sold a lot of them. So we started making miscellaneous tabs and selling those. That was cool. We got some of the other stores selling them here and there. And they just kind of became this time where we had this like problem in the shop where we could never get trucks through because the one thing happens or you're doing gears on a truck and the pinion bearing is wrong. Well, that sets you back a day if you next day it and catch it in time, right?
Yeah.
So now the whatever 2 days you scheduled for that thing, everybody behind it has to get pushed back a day. And it's like this constant struggle and battle. And so I had, brought up, and I'm not talking about like locally. This is like to the higher ups that are in California and Portland who don't live up in the Northwest and don't come to the store. I'm like bringing stuff up to them.
The Devereaux.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And,
Domo.
it was just different, right? They didn't know. I don't know if it was that the people were different down there, but like, I'm like, man, I think we need to change this around. We have this giant warehouse of parts that are got an inch of dust on them because we don't sell them. Like, if we do half the warehouse, there's already a bay door and put 4 or 5 hoists, because then we don't have this backup. We don't even if we didn't even have more techs, like, it just.
I agree with you on the model there. The models seem to be, at least maybe not for Sacramento, but the model for Portland, the model for Everett, the model for Spokane was really that one bay door with one hoist in there, right?
Yep.
That was kind of the rotational. And it did, we would have the same problem. Scheduling was always a conflict. And you only had one mechanic, right? You only had one guy in the back. It was, loved it because it was a pure profit on the books, but it was only one guy. So if it backed up with that one guy, there wasn't guy number 2 or anybody else or even another hoist to put it on. And
if that guy's sick, then what do you do?
Yeah.
Like he's booked out 3 weeks. Like, it's just a problem. And it just got to the point where I remember like kind of taking inventory on myself and going, well, cost me about $250 a week to live, pay my rent with, a couple other dudes and, a truck payment and like, cheap food. Like, well, I think I could quit my job. And need to say I don't have any tools. I don't have a toolbox. I don't have a welder. I don't have a saw. Like I'm no tools. Like I got nothing.
Yep.
And other than like my toolkit, I keep my Jeep, but I remember just being like, if there's any time in my life that I can try to make something work, no better time than when I can go mow the neighborhood lawns and make $250 this week if it all falls through, right? Like this is the time. And, obviously talking to people around me, they're kind of apprehensive. Like, you want to do what? You want to
So what was you wanted to leave. What was your grand vision? Was it, you wanted to be the fabricator? You wanted to pick up?
At that point I was obsessed with Ultra 4. It's all I could think about. I had even borrowed money from my uncle. At that time, on the Pirate 4x4 classifieds, there's a guy who had an old Jimmy's chassis and like a 60 and some like IROC, like some parts for
so for you, it was hammers that kind of had the hook. Like you were
100%.
Too young to have the UROC Arca days or any of that. But it was.
I watched some of that stuff, but I wasn't into the competition rock crawling. I was into
but you weren't kind of like an adult, so to speak. I mean, You weren't like, you can make your own decision and do it. Like you could be a kid and watch it and enjoy it, but it was now it has purpose, right?
Yeah.
It has,
and I was just, after we went that first year, all of us were just so pumped and we were wheeling already. And it just like brought that next level of excitement. And so I just wanted to start a fab shop. Like I wanted to build whatever, but like my goal was to build Ultra 4 cars and see if I can make a living at doing that. And so one day I quit my job. It was.
What'd you do? You just walk into Joe and say, I'm out?
I truly don't remember how it all went down. Like Joe and I are still friends today. So like, it wasn't like, screw you, I'm out of here. It was like, I think I'm going to do this thing. And I don't remember exactly how that went down. He probably does. I should ask him sometime.
What's he doing now?
He's a Snap-on guy.
Oh, nice.
And he went to like Snap-on corporate for a little while. And now he's got 1 or 2 trucks, I think. And he's doing really well for himself. He's, nice. It's great. He's got a really cool 1-ton JK now, and he wheels all the time and a family. And
next time you see him, tell him I said hi.
I will. Sure.
You spend quite a bit of time back and forth on the phone with him. So and then once I remember he shot me a text or called me when they decided to close that location finally, and it was I felt for him and the fam for sure. So
but so I bought this chassis kit, not a chassis kit. It was like somebody's rusty parts, but I borrowed $15,000, which was like, I didn't know how I was going to repay it back. And, my uncle believed in me and was like, yeah, I'll do it, and we signed some paperwork, and
Nice.
so I got these parts, and I started like collecting parts. This was why I was still at Central when I did that. And I remember like we were a trail gear dealer, so I got like a trail gear double-ended steering ram, and you know, like because you get a deal on it. And I was, you know, I bought a 6-liter LS that was 100% disassembled in like 5 crates, but it was like $150. And I'm like, well, I can figure out how to put a motor together. Right? It was like under a guy's bench, and like
it sparks a memory and a laugh because I remember Ron Chick was our store manager at Everett, and I remember him saying he would always get frustrated, like, why is everything you're ordering special order? Because there was nothing on the shelf or nothing that we would have that I wanted to play with, right? Everything was like a special order. I was like, because this is what's cool. Like that's, I mean, I don't know how to explain it at the time, but now looking back, it was like, nobody wanted just off the shelf. And then we were bringing in like, I remember when Terraflex hit, you know, it was the coolest, an adjustable, flexible arm for your TJ.
Yeah.
Bring it. Like, that's awesome.
An 1 3/4 coil spacer from Daystar. Like,
yeah. Now we were bringing all stuff with special order, and then it would be like 5 months later, they would figure out, oh, maybe we should bring this part number in, you know? And so, yeah, there's a lot of that.
Yeah. And I mean, it was great. And I actually had that chassis. I built a lot of it in the back of Central. You know, we had all this space. And so like after work, I'd be back there putting stuff together. And so I ended up quitting there. I lived in a duplex with 3 other dudes, and I had a 2-car attached garage. I had no tools. You know, I had friends that I wheeled with, and, you know, I borrowed some tools, and one buddy like lent me a snap-on welder, and I like borrowed a chop saw, and like, I'd pull the dryer out each day and plug the welder in. And I didn't know how to weld. I'd never, you know, my buddy taught me how to weld a little bit, and I just started like figuring it out. I was building traction bars for trucks, or, you know, I got a bender and I started building roll cages for whoever needed a roll cage for so cheap it was stupid, and like, but making a little bit of money.
Yeah.
And I paid an extra $50 a month rent to get both sides of the duplex garage, so I could, you know, I'd roll stuff out we had this like steep driveway, and I'd have stuff out in the driveway, like just doing what I could, you know. And I started to get like, you know, a little bit of a schedule where there's a little bit of a backlog, but I knew I needed space and tools, and
so you just all word of mouth, just or say the overflow of stuff that Central didn't want to do at that point.
And there was one day where I like made these little flyers, and I went to like all the like motorcycle shops, and like everywhere I could think of. And I had a Volkswagen Rabbit that barely ran. It was painted flat black. I'd sold my truck because obviously I was broke, and so I painted it flat black, and the wheels gloss red. It was like a lowered Volkswagen Rabbit that total piece of junk, but it got me around.
6 degrees of Volkswagen.
Right back into the Volkswagen roofs from high school.
If you're in automotive aftermarket, any way, shape, or form, I mean, I feel like there's so many of us that came from air cooled or water cooled, like one or the other. That was the hook.
My first car was an 85 GTI, and it was like, that's my first, like, you know, that's why Hazzard Fabworx is lime green, because I ended up painting it lime green, and, you know, building like the coolest thing in the world I could. And I had it all lightened up and what I thought was fast. And I torque steered it into the front of a brand new Audi. And
you'll appreciate my first car was a 77 lime green 4-door Rabbit I bought from a guy named Shane for $750. The starter hung up on it, didn't always start. But it ran and drove, and it was 4-door and had the little like black graphic across the bottom that had the little rabbit on it. I mean, I was super stoked, but that was
a lime green Rabbit as your first car?
Yeah, that was my first car.
That's crazy.
Yeah, lime green. Shane, man, I can't think of his name. At the time, he sold it, and he bought like a Nissan. It's like before the hard body pickup. It was a white single cab, short bed, like lowered it, put 2 10s behind it, like 2 pile 10s, and we all just thought it was badass.
Mini truck world.
Yeah, mini truck world. But I picked up on his Rabbit and drove it. I think I was 15 and a half at the time. I wasn't even 16 yet.
Yeah.
And drove it to school, and I kept it about a year or so until I got back from fishing.
You know my story a little bit. You know my buddy Dave, STM Tuning.
Yeah.
You know, like one of my best friends in the world now. He builds crazy rad turbo Volkswagen
he built some
stuff.
cool stuff. He built some,
like, when I got that Volkswagen, I just thought they were cool, and then I got it, and he had like all the coolest ones in town. I remember going to his shop, and I mean, he's like 8 years older than me, so he was like 30, and then he would have been 24.
Yeah.
And he's got this Volkswagen shop and like putting nitrous on them and turbo in them. I remember like trying to just suck info from him, and he was only like, he was smart enough to only give me like a little bit of info, like, you know,
he didn't want you getting in that world.
You know, you got to break a lot of eggs to make an omelet, dude. You know, like I remember him telling me that, and I used to be like, God, that guy's he's such a jerk. Like, and now he's like truly one of my best friends. I talk to him every single day. Like because he got into Jeeps, and we became friends through other stuff after that. And like him and I go to the Hammers every year, and he was part of that crew, and just crazy how the Volkswagen thing will rope you back in.
Yeah, it is a small world. So you got the duplex garage, like you're cranking out some stuff. You know, you got.
I wasn't cranking out nothing. I was doing some stuff.
Yeah, but you're you know, you start to get the vision, right? I mean, you're starting to get
my chassis. Again, like another guy to help me out, let me put it in the corner of his shop, and he had some fab tools, so I'd work on it over there. That thing bounced around to like 6 different shops. People. You know, helping me out here and there. And then there was a shop kind of behind our duplex not on a main road, but like you could see it from the main road, kind of down this little side alley. And it was a shop from a house, and the shop came for rent for like storage. And I was like, that is awesome. I need that. It was like $400 a month or something. And it was 4 times the space I had, which isn't very much. And so I rented that from this guy. His name was Mike, great guy, and started doing stuff there. All of a sudden had a little room so I could put some of the longer term projects there. I still didn't have mine there because I got kind of full, you know, so I had work to do. I had my friend Rocky. I started to get a little busy, so he came and helped me out, and he would come help me for free for a long time because it was cool, and he's a great guy. He would always, you know, show up like it was his full-time job. And I finally ended up like, I remember being like, dude, I got to pay you. He'd be like, okay, you know, but he was so cool to like, there's lots of times where I'm like, dude, I owe you money, but I like don't have any, you know, and he'd be like, oh, don't worry about it. Like, you know, get me next when we get paid for this job or whatever. And so him and I started doing some stuff together. And then, one day my phone rings. By that time, the house attached to that shop came for rent. And then I rented the house, like moved out of the duplex, rented that house.
Nice.
Not nice. Great place, but living where you work it's not cool. You know, the guys are there at 9:00 tonight to drop off their truck. So you meet them, and then they're there at 4 a.m. because they got to get to work. Like, you have no separation, you know?
Yeah.
So as people know, that becomes a problem.
Yeah.
But it worked good at the time. It was great. But I remember I was inside making a sandwich, probably a peanut butter sandwich for lunch, and my phone rings, and I'm just like, hello? Like, that's a number I don't know. And I get hey, is this Luke Shuman? I go, yeah. Hazzard Fabworx? I go, yeah. He goes, well, this is Fred Williams from Peterson 4-Wheel and Off-Road Magazine. I'm like, what's going on, man? Like, what are you doing calling me? He goes, do you work on Jeeps? I go, yeah, I work on them every day. Anytime I can, you know? And he goes, well, I've been, you know, watching you a little bit, and I've heard some stuff about you. What do you think about building a rig that's going to lead the Ultimate Adventure in 2012? And this is 2011. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, I want to do it, but what are you talking about? He's like, well, how it would work is you would build this truck. You know, we get a lot of the parts donated from sponsors, and then you'd come on the trip with us. And you know, your name's on the truck, and you'd be a sponsor of the Ultimate Adventure. And like, okay, like what kind of bill? Like, what do you like? You're trying to extract information, and there wasn't a lot of information. He was just like, you want to do this? And I'm like, I think I do, but can I like phone a friend?
And how did he find your info?
Let's see. So Gabe Thompson, as far as I know, Gabe Thompson, Suburban White Guys, made all the Pirates of the Rubicon videos and all that. He was our buddy.
Funny, not a lot of people know how much influence Gabe had. During that time frame. So
huge.
just ran into some old stickers and stuff I have on a toolbox of him. And in one of my other podcasts, we touched on how Gabe had how to add. I mean, he was generating content that we all wanted to watch and see.
Yeah, the hard way. Like, he had to actually make like a DVD and carry a camera, like walk the Rubicon.
Yeah.
Like, he was one of the original guys who went down to KOH with, and so he knew some people. Like, I remember we were that KOH 09 doing Donuts and Mustard Dogs Samurai on the lake bed, and I was in there, and like, this is late in the day, we shouldn't have been doing nothing, but Mustard Dog was wild, and no, it wasn't Mustard Dog, it was I screwed up the name. Who's it gonna be?
Sammy would have been
I forget it.
You're not talking about
it wasn't Mustard Dog, it was it'll come to me. But we're doing donuts, and he comes into a turn, and these are old junky rock crawlers, these are Pirates of the Rubicon rigs, and it unloads, and we go cartwheeling and we end up upside down, and he's like, "You all right?" And I'm like, "I'm fine, dude. Are you all right?" He's like, "Yeah, get out quick." Like, something about it couldn't be left upside down because it's gonna leak fuel and start on fire, and like, he was like, rolls it enough that he knows, like, we got to get it over quick.
Yeah.
And so we like bail out of the thing, and the truck like rolls up. "You guys fine?" And he's like, doesn't even care. He's getting his winch line to get it flipped over. We get it flipped back over, and it doesn't light on fire. And like, there's stuff scattered everywhere. And we roll back to camp giggling, like crazy. But that was like, so that was tangent. But Gabe had known Fred from the magazines and from doing the Suburban White Guy stuff. And so that's how Fred kind of started following me.
In the mix.
Yeah. Yep. And I was, that was like the start of like MySpace was around, but like Instagram was just kind of getting going. And I
wasn't even going back then.
I never even liked any of that stuff,
It was like MySpace and Facebook, and Facebook killed MySpace.
So I remember doing like Facebook posts, but I always stayed away from the social medias. I thought it was garbage. And so I just had like logos, and then I'd post like,
because really, if you think about it, YouTube didn't hit until 2007, I believe it was. I think it launched in 05 or 06, but it really didn't take any stride until, I believe, 06 or 07, I think it was. Yeah. So I'm off on my years, but
that's wild.
It was a pre-social media time frame for sure.
Yeah, I didn't think it was good for anybody to know every bit of your business, and so I stayed away, but I did post. I'd be careful. I'd take a photo from like way back in the corner of the shop and up, and like hold your like flip phone or whatever you had at the time way back, and like clean everything so it looked like bigger and cooler than it was.
Yep.
And then it was a mix of like that, and then we had this thing called the Millbillies where we'd all dress up like bikers, and we'd ride our like cruiser bikes from bar to bar in Spokane Valley where we lived. And we did it every Wednesday night for years and years and years. And we'd get like 70 people in these rides, and we had all these games we played, and bikes with speakers and drink beers. And so it was like a mix of like, this is an off-road shop, but we also like have a lot of fun. And so Fred was like, "You look like someone I could hang out with. If you want to do this build, we could, it seems like."
So you committed, obviously, and said, "Heck yeah,
I'm in." I'd asked him if I could call him tomorrow, because I wanted to call my dad, and like, because basically I don't have any money. I just like got this new building, and I got like this guy helping me out, and now I got to build a truck for free, which means I'm not going to make any money. And there was no talk about like how much he's going to be here, how much help there is. Like, am I buying nuts and bolts, or are you buying nuts and bolts? Like,
yeah.
There really wasn't much communication at all. It was just like, "Do you want to do this?" And I'm like, the immediate answer is, "Dude, you mean I got to go on Ultimate Adventure? Like, I've been watching and reading every one of those magazines. Like, absolutely. But can I? Like, I don't have any money."
Financially. So you waited. What'd you tell them the next day?
Yeah, I called and talked to people, and they were kind of apprehensive, but like, it's a great opportunity. And so, I called him and said, "Yeah, I'd love to do it. Like, can we nail down some more details?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll let you know as they come together." And He's like, Jeep's going to give us a Jeep. This was an 11. So the new interior and the 3.6 Pentastar motor was coming out in the JK.
Yep.
And yeah, it kind of like, we didn't have a lot of communication. This was earlier in the year, and like, you know, Ultimate Adventure is like around 4th of July usually. And so all of a sudden he's like, all right, Jeep's giving us a Jeep. Like, we're going to build this Jeep. I'm like, okay, like, what are we doing? And he sends me a picture on a napkin of like, that was the double-ended Wrangler, the orange double-ended. That,
coming and going.
Yeah, the which way Wrangler or the off-roadster. So he sends me this picture of like a double-ended Jeep with 4-wheel steer. And I'm like, oh no, like
you didn't like it.
I was like, it's going to be ugly. And, oh, okay. Like, I mean, it's cool, but like little napkin photo, I'm like, how are we going to do this and make it look finished and professional? And like, you know, he wanted 4-wheel steering. He'd mentioned that. And I'm like, cool. But like Ultimate Adventure does hundreds of miles on the interstate. Like, okay, we'll figure it out, you know? And so we ended up talking about it, and he goes to the factory and pops out with an orange 2-door JK Rubicon, and behind it is a trailer with the front of that 2-door JK Rubicon, like a cut off front frame section, fenders, grill, hood. And he's got that behind a trailer, and he drove it to BDS. They put a 4-inch lift and some 35s on it. He went to Moab and wheeled it in Moab for a week. So that
Nice.
wasn't now. So that would be April, EJS, right?
Yeah.
And then, so we had till July to build it, which isn't much time.
Yeah.
And Fred's also got like a job at the magazine and content and a life. So he ended up coming up to the shop and was like, all right, here's what we're going to do. I got these people sending parts. These are our sponsors. We had, you know, Spider Tracks, Nitto. That was Chris Corbett at Nitto.
That was been kind of predecessor of mine. Tim Colty, I think, would have been there at that time.
First time I met Tim. And yeah, I mean, it was BDS. It was, I mean, I forget them all now, but we started ordering parts, and, you know, like I assembled my first set of Spider Tracks axles for that Jeep, you know, like figuring out axle lengths and, you know, how is this stuff going to work? We had a true high 9 in the front, and like, I mean, it had huge axles in it, 4-wheel steer. We put a front frame section, we grafted it in on the back, and we built, because, you know, you got to have a roll cage and all this stuff. So the structure that like integrated the two was a fabricated 1/8-inch plate, like a roll cage.
Nice.
And that kind of integrated the two. And yeah, it was a ton of work. And Fred would come for like a week or two, and then he'd have to go back for a week. And that was like our 1 week. We have a bunch of regular customers, and we smash as much work as we could to get it done. So we had a little bit of money to eat food.
Yeah.
So when Fred came back up in a week, we could like jam on this thing. And then in the middle of that, in like May, I decided I needed a bigger shop. Like, we were out of space, and I'd been working a lot with the guys at Diesel Power Products, and they were moving into a bigger shop, and there was like a bunch of room in the back. So we ended up moving into the shop together. And so in the middle of the build, like the truck's cut in half and on jack stands. And I also got like these other long-term builds going, and we up and moved everything, you know, 10 miles down the road to a bigger shop.
I think that's when I had met you. I think I met you when you had first moved into Diesel Power Products. You were just kind of wedging in there.
Yeah. So we had like the back of their shop space and one bay door, and I had one office up front.
Yeah.
And then I hired like my first real employee. You know, Rocky was helping me every day. Like, wouldn't have been able to do any of that without him. And then we were setting up pallet racking, and this guy, Dylan, came by to help after hours. He was like singing and dancing and had his dead blow. He was setting up pallet racking and jamming around, and he was super interested in what we had going on. And we talked a bunch about it, and he was back another day, and I'm like, how long have you worked there? And he's like, oh, I've been there for like 6 years. And I'm like, how much money do you make? Do you want to work here? And he was like, I would love to work here. And we worked out a deal while he was working after hours, and he started working for me. He's my first employee. Like, real like on the books employee. Because at that time, like I started actually like doing invoices, not working for cash, like, you know, trying to like create more of a business.
Yeah.
And
doing a
you know,
little bit
like,
of everything. Just
oh yeah, like installing lift kits and building, you know, aside from that ultimate adventure stuff, we had our own like, you know, big Jeep builds, you know, custom long arms and high fenders and armor and cages. And then, you know, installing lift kits on trucks, and Diesel Power Products was sending us a little bit of installs. And then we do some of their help with some of their stuff.
That seemed like a pretty good, you know, relationship there
at that time.
Because
we did a lot of fun stuff.
Yeah. Seemed like there was a lot going on in one building, right? There was
Well, and they have a lot of big ideas, and their business was growing.
Yeah.
And so we got to execute some of those cool ideas. And we had a lot of fun. We did some traveling together. That year they became a sponsor of the Ultimate Adventure. So they came on that UA with the Diesel JK. I mean, just lots of cool stuff we all did together. I mean, that's, you know, but we're talking 12 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean,
and you know, with that, the dream is always when you take part in a big build or some sort of big project that there's, you know, it elevates the game, right? It elevates your business, your stature, did it work? Did you get calls?
So that whole build, like, there was a lot of cool things with that build.
I mean, there was some negative to it. I remember that. A lot of people, it was very polarized.
It was controversial.
It was. There was some that loved it, some that hated it.
Yep.
Right.
And that's just like anything else. You know, back then I never thought like one time that someone was going to say, man, you built that double-ended Jeep, will you build me one? Because I want to pay you a bunch of money to build that. I never thought that. And that's what everybody else thinks. Everybody who ever asked me anything, as I was like, oh man, how many of those have you built? Like,
the double-ended Jeep?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't think anybody would want one.
No, I agree. But like, that's what people's assumption is you do this big marketing thing and now you're the double-ended Jeep guy.
Yeah.
That's not how it works, right?
Yeah.
It's just brand awareness, credibility. Yeah. And that's all I could ever hope for. And that's, you know, it did start a lot of that for us. I never got a single person ever that said, hey man, I saw you on Ultimate Adventure. Will you build my Jeep for me? That's not how it works. It's, oh, we've heard of this guy, but we've heard of that guy too. Oh, well, Luke did the Ultimate Adventure build. Oh, well, maybe that'll skew them into going with me versus the other guy.
Yeah.
Not saying there's really anybody else at that time, but
put your name in the conversation.
Put
your name in the
credibility.
Yeah.
And that's kind of all you can hope for any marketing really is, you know, name recognition, credibility.
You doing that build brought you that. Was that kind of the turning point that just you saw some significant growth after that? I mean, by now, you know, Hammers is moving. Things are kind of humming along.
Hammers is moving. We're building Ultra 4 cars after work. I didn't, you know, do any start to finish Ultra 4 car builds. I was involved in 2 Ultra 4 cars that were big competitive cars, but they were other people's cars. They did a lot of the work, talented fabricators. But they wanted help, you know, on different things. So sometimes the car would come to my shop for a little bit. You know, lots of times we were at their shop working late into the night on their cars and doing the Ultra 4 thing. And that was like the only way I found to really scratch that Ultra 4 itch was on, you know, more or less on somebody else's dollar. You know, we all invest into those things too, but
yeah.
And yeah, the Ultimate Adventure, all that kind of stuff. You know, that we went on the trip. That's a whole crazy another story, is getting down to start the Ultimate Adventure with no money and taking Rocky's Jeep because it's the only thing that was like cool. We ended up doing a lot of the work turning out at Central 4-Wheel Drive years before. And then we get there to unload it off the trailer and the rear diff is blown up.
Awesome.
So we put a diff in it on the trailer at the start of Ultimate Adventure, but went on the trip, had a great time, and the Jeep worked good. But what was cool about that Ultimate Adventure build too is I was able to pull like from a lot of my friends for help. And that, you know, I already had been doing that a lot. And, you know,
that build had purpose. That was easy to ask them, you know, it was,
and like,
it was a Peterson's build.
Oh yeah. But we have like a full hydraulic ram in the rear, but this thing's got to go down the highway. So how are we going to lock this thing out? And so Rob, who had the 4463 Ultra 4 car, he was a machinist, and he made these cool, like, aluminum. You'd steer the ram one way, you'd put this collar over it, and you'd twist it 90 degrees, and it would had a detent pin in it. It would cam lock, and then you steer it the other way, and then make just enough room to slide the other one in, cam lock it, and now everything's straight.
Nice.
So then you do all your road days, and you get to wheeling, you'd cam those off, put them in your tool bag. And so, like, stuff like that was really cool. That made that vehicle very usable.
Nice.
And, you know, obviously it helped that nothing broke. And it's like the first year ever that we didn't work on the rig. Obviously helped that we had a brand new vehicle, but like we never had to work on it. So
nice.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, nice. Where's that vehicle now, you know?
Yeah, cool story. It sat at Motor Trend and got parts robbed off of it. It's been on, I believe, every Ultimate Adventure since. And everybody's driven it, and it got Dana Ultimate 60s put in it, and then, you know, it sat at Motor Trend, and the cats got robbed off of it. They put some different tires on it, and like battery died, and like the winches got stolen off of it because I had winches front and rear. And Dave Chappelle, who was you know, one of the dirt heads from Dirt Every Day, he's doing a YouTube thing, and he actually just got it from Motor Trend. And I mean, like, he just took it on the new UA.
Nice.
But what's cool is, you know, he's got great vision, and he wanted to rebuild it and make it more of his own. And so he actually made it into a Jeep truck, you know, so it's not rear steer. It's got like a true good looking Jeep bed on the back, redid a bunch of stuff and repainted it. It's really cool. He did a really good job.
Nice.
And he actually just uploaded his latest episode. I just watched it last night.
Nice.
About doing that. So he just kind of finished it. It's really cool. He did a really good job, and he kind of talks about his vision, and it's just cool. He did a great job. So it lives again, and then he actually lives up here in Spokane. So he drives it around in Spokane now.
Yeah. So, very cool. Very
super cool. Yeah. I think we'll get a few pieces off that original build to hang on the wall here at the shop. So that'll be cool.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. So after the build, and after the, you know, you know, Ultimate Adventure, you come back in mid-July, and then just back at it. Like, it's get
to work. We had, I mean, I believe Dylan stayed back, and, you know, we had some projects for him to work on best we could. And we got back, and I had no money. I had no nothing, and a bunch of work to do. And so we just got to work building trucks, and just kind of worked that out. We you know, that kind of grew. We got busy enough and doing builds. And eventually we needed to move out of the Diesel Power Products location and get our own place. And
now,
so we did that.
Tell me how being a musician fits in all this.
That's back. Oh yeah. So that's
because you skipped that part.
Yeah. That's back when I first started working at the house, the duplex. I was playing music full time in a country band, like a country cover band, playing like old school country stuff. I was drummer. And
nice.
So, and that kind of played into me quitting, as I had a little bit of income, right?
Yeah.
When I quit Central. And so, I mean, we were 4 or 5 nights a week playing at bars till 2 a.m. You know, back in those days, you're 21 to 24, you can drink, play on stage till 2 a.m., get home at 3, still get up at 6 and go to work. And it wasn't a problem. And it was crazy. We played in country bands. We had a lot of fun, and did some really cool things. I played in a couple different bands, and but there became a time where it was like, I can't do both.
Can't do both.
Hazard's starting to grow, and that I need to focus on that and not be out till 2 a.m. And so yeah, I ended up quit playing music, but there was quite a while that like the music was my income that put food on the table. And back then, if you got $100 a night, you were stoked, minus bar tab, you know, like,
yeah.
It's crazy, but you know, I could pay my bills doing that, you know, the $250 a week that I needed. So yeah, that kind of helped me through there, and made, you know, I met a lot of people that way. And once people find out, like, oh, the drummer of the Taggart Wheelies also welds truck parts on, you know, like, get a little bit through there. And it kind of introduced me to meeting people and talking to people. That helped with that, you know?
Yep.
So that's kind of the music caveat.
Awesome.
I don't play at all anymore.
You don't anymore? Nothing?
No, I mean, I have a drum set, and like, I mean, if I'm a place, I see someone, I'll get in and play a song here and there, but I'm a hack these days. It's been a lot of years. Like really good memories.
So you humming along, kind of shacked in there with Diesel Power products, and
and there was at the time they were growing. We were kind of
doing
some
significant growth during that time frame.
Yeah,
I remember
quickly.
all that they put into that location you were at.
Yeah.
And I remember visiting, going, "Wow, this is an amazing facility." And then, they've grown their business into a much bigger facility.
Yeah, Brian does it right. He's a great guy. And
Brian and Cooper both that I've known now for years. They really have grown that into something pretty special. Honestly,
yeah,
it's pretty cool to see.
It's interesting because when I was moving out of there, kind of going our different ways. There was some years where we all didn't talk much, and we went from doing everything together to going your own different ways. And
like happens in business.
Yeah, well, and nothing, no hard feelings or anything. But like these days, it's cool. They actually so I moved to a building down the road. Then I since bought my building, and they bought a building right down the road from me actually. And Brian's made a super amazing facility over there, one of the coolest places you've ever been. And
it
upstairs
is pretty cool.
This giant, incredible gym, and I actually work out at the gym now. So I do. The trainer that I go to is at their gym, and so I see him all the time. It's great.
Yeah, that new building they're in. What they did was they took that kind of historic, old school, factory style building, and all brick and old wood and
train tracks through it, and
and it just turned it into an amazing facility for both the gym and Diesel Power products. Like it's a very very cool facility.
It's just super cool. It's one of those buildings that has so much character, and he does such a good job of leaving that and making it nice, but have that old character. It's very
very cool
they did
place.
An awesome job. Very cool.
Very cool place. So you moved out of there. You're in a smaller building.
No, I got a bigger space. I rented my own facility finally on Main Street in Spokane.
Nice.
Big step for me. And I remember it was the first time since I like quit Central that it was like, okay, I got to do this on my own. I got like 1 year of legit books that show we don't make any money, that prove that we're broke. And, I needed this space. And so I rented, the side of this building on Main Street. I want to say it was 6,000 feet. And I remember being like, all right, I just got to sell a bunch of stuff so I have a little money. And so I remembered anything I didn't need, I sold. And a big thing on that was my Ultra 4 car. I never actually raced that car in Ultra 4, but it was, that buggy ended up getting finished and ended up working really well. I'd cut the Jimmy's chassis apart and made it actually really low and sit. Back in those days, they were tall cars. I made this one super low with a bunch of up travel. And spent a bunch of time with the guys at Bilstein and tuning the shocks and working on the ACV. And it was a shock on axle car, but it worked really good. And that was like my baby, my pride and joy. We wheeled it all over and took it to the hammers a bunch of times, and ended up telling myself that if I rented this building, I was going to sell that. It's kind of my own, like, this is what I'm going to do
that's
to
what
myself.
You got to do. I mean, I've seen that. We've all done that time.
Thing.
Like you, in a way, you can't afford to keep it. So
right, and honestly, I could have kept it.
Well, I don't mean that. It's just it's by shifting it, you're growing things. It's what you're
my
doing.
own sacrifice. I told myself I would do, and so I did that. I actually sold it to a guy that had us do a bunch of work on it multiple times. That car's still around these days. It's got coilover bypass on it, a big motor, and all sorts of stuff in it.
Nice.
But so I sold that car and got the new building, and we were growing. This is still me working out in the shop every day, right? So I'm still, you don't get a lot of phone calls, but we got plenty of work. So Dylan and I are in the shop every day, building stuff. We don't have any of the cool tools we have now. So we're hand plasma cutting everything. Yep. We got a, Miller 252 welder. That was like this big purchase I remember getting. Before that, I was still borrowing welders, and we finally got a lift. Big deal. I had to borrow money to get the lift. I borrowed money from my dad to get the lift and finally paid him back, just all that stuff. And, And then I hired another guy, more of a mechanic type guy, and we started doing some engine conversions, and we were just kind of getting the ball rolling, and it was good. I mean, we were as busy as we wanted to be, and then I did another ultimate adventure with a customer's rig in 2014 out of that shop. That was cool.
I think I was on that one.
Yeah, you were. That was the first time I met you.
Yeah, I think Mel and I were on that one. That was the first time I
met you, but
I'd met you prior. I'd met you during the JK build, but I may or may not remember it, but I remember that. What I was doing there, why I was there. I think I was with
you were weren't you an outside rep?
I don't know if I was doing the outside rep thing during that time frame, 2012. That's possible. Or I was like tail end of TJM, or there was some reason that I stopped by there. Might have been TJM, but hard to say. Yeah. But I remember being there, and I remember you were in the back. I just remember you had there was a bunch of everything from buggy to Jeep to put an LS in it, like hydraulic steering, like just a lot of stuff going on there at Power Products. So, because I think it was Cooper.
Yeah, that was in the Power Products days. So that was the
Power Products. I never made it. When you left Power Products, I don't believe I went to the other shop. I don't remember going there.
I think I moved out of Power Products in 2012.
Okay. Yeah.
2013 maybe.
Okay. Yeah, that was I was just there briefly during that time frame because you were still there.
Yeah. So that would have been the first time I met you at Power Products, that building that we shared together. And then and through that, when I got my own place, it was a big sense of pride. I rented it, of course, but we started to get a little busier, and I could buy a used truck, and I still live in my apartment then. Yeah, when I was at the Diesel Power Products thing, I ended up getting an apartment because I had to get out of that house because it's too expensive. And so I was like the guy that was never going to live in an apartment, and I was living in a cheap apartment, like on the freeway. But whatever, you do it, there was plenty of sacrifice along the way personally. And, but along with that sacrifice, a million people helping me out, believing in me, and lots of help from friends. And once we got into that building of our own on Main Street there, we started to kind of grow to where it seemed like it was sufficient, and I could support a couple employees.
That's where you hit your stride.
Yeah, we got busier. So I remember hiring another guy with the hopes that he would be able to sell like more of a counter guy, parts guy, like, help us, acquire all these parts we need. I was still in the back, but I needed help. Like, I can't get stuff done in the back because I'm answering phones and
take it back. I do remember that building. I do remember that building. I did visit that building because then subsequently I remember all the talk when you were talking about buying the new building.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
And that was like, I was there at 13 to 16. So I was there, and then I ended up hiring guy Scott, who was able to work in the back, was also able to answer phones a little bit and help us acquire parts as needed. That's, even to
Scott,
this day.
Scott came out of, didn't he come out of Colin Colin's place?
Nope. That was different. Yep.
Gotcha.
I forget where Scott worked before. It might have been Central. I think he might have put a short term at Central. I don't remember. But he ended up coming across, and he could kind of be a Swiss Army knife. He could answer a phone or acquire a part or work on a truck.
Yeah.
Right. And like, even today, that's something I've kind of kept in our shop is, I got Swiss Army knives to humans. They're able to do a lot of things. It's not like I only do gears. That's all I know. Everybody bounce around. But so then, I got to the point where, my accountant back in the, when I first needed an accountant years before that, he liked me, and whatever reason we got along. Still one of my great friends today. And Sean told me, like, you're going to buy a commercial building. And I remember like truly laughing in his face because I was like so broke, and I couldn't even dream of buying a house.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're going to buy a commercial building. And I remember just thinking, like, almost like you want to call your buddy and be like, guess what this guy said?
Yeah.
It was the funniest thing I heard all day. And, and then, as things go, like, it's time, I need to buy a building. Like, I can see I need something that's my own. So I worked at the bank, and they approved me for not a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money, but not really enough to get like the building that I felt like I needed.
Yeah.
And so I found this building that was perfect. It was just twice as much as I was approved for. But it was, 20,000 feet, total tear down piece of junk. It's got holes in the side, homeless people living in it, no power, no lights, total piece of junk. But it was a 20,000 square foot building on the main Trent Avenue, the main highway through town.
Yeah, good size it is. Very good size.
And so I remember that was the second time I sold like everything. That was the biggest one. I was like, before I'd made sacrifices and sold a bunch of stuff and, lived broke and cheap again. And this one was like, all right.
Full liquidation.
Full liquidation. And full liquidation, I'm still going to need to borrow from everybody in the world that'll lend me money. And I'm still going to become short and need to figure out, I'm going to have to learn a lot about lending and hard money and all these things to get this building. And so, yeah, there was this long process.
So who is your mentor on that? Who are you talking to on that?
Well, my accountant one kind of pushed me to do that. But then I'd made some friends at the bank. Everybody always told me to make friends at the bank, and I was good at meeting people, and people liked me because I do cool stuff, and so that helped out. And so I worked with the bank a little bit, and they were like, we can approve you for this. And I'm like, okay, well, we're like halfway there. We still got to raise a crap ton of money, And so then I was able to borrow a little bit of money from family.
Nice.
And
because there was no owner financing. He didn't want to finance anything.
No, this building was
wanted to
bought
straight
and then
cash
sat
out.
vacant for 2 years because it was supposed to be a pot grow. They couldn't get licensing or something. And they needed to cash out, and they were selling it for less than they bought it for to cut their losses.
Gotcha.
And this in 2016. And so, I mean, short story long, I ended up barely making this building work. With another industry contact, I was able to use some help. Dave Schlossberg, Synergy and Poly Performance helped me like sort out some, hard money lending. I didn't even know what that was at the time. Right. But there was a time where we had this big storm power outage where we lost power for 2 weeks, this huge windstorm through Spokane.
Yep.
And so we couldn't work at the shop, but I had all these employees and I needed to feed them and pay them. And so we showed up at work every morning. If the power was off, we'd go to breakfast. We'd come back. If the power was still off, we'd come over to this building I was trying to buy and we'd screw around with it, like work on it best we could. I had a key, which I shouldn't have, but I did. Not that I needed it because there was like holes in the side you could just walk in. But so we started kind of cleaning up stuff and screwing with the building because this building had power. And we did that for like a week and built a sales counter we still have today when it wasn't my building. And
you just were excited. You just got in there a little early to get
well,
it.
what are we going to do? I'm paying these guys no matter what.
Yeah.
So we might as well do something we can. We can't work on anything over there. So we started working on stuff here.
You're just in escrow. You just wait for it to close, but it's a done deal. You're just in there.
Well, I thought it was a done deal, and then it falls apart.
Oh.
The SBA funding falls through, and I needed like $90,000 because I, had every loan, and then they're like, "Well, SBA can do this for you," and this. I had every loan I could possibly get, and everybody was like, "Dude, you can't afford this building, but we'll give you a little bit, and you'll give you a little bit, and I can make it all happen if everything went perfect." And the SBA loan fell through, like I've heard they all do, and so that's when I called Dave and was like, "Do you know anybody that does hard money lending?" And he's like, I can find someone for you, and we ended up doing hard money. And I had no idea what that was, but I got $90,000 hard money. And by this time I'm like so broke and so stressed. And now I'm like, I got no money and I got to figure out how to move an off-road shop. You got rigs with no axles under them. You got like all your tooling and, once again, like all my friends and all the customers and stuff. Like one of my good customers at the time brought over a low boy semi-trailer and a great all and let us use it and the driver for the day. Like I had sales reps coming over to help us carry parts, and my uncle brought his horse trailer. My other uncle brought his forklift over. Like, it's like, I'll call guys. I need everybody's help. If I've ever done you a favor, can you return it today, please?
Yep.
And so we did that. We got moved in here, and that was the biggest, like, like step forward. Like we really started to move pretty quickly after that. As I had my own building, everybody was proud of it. We're a bigger location, and all of a sudden it was like, okay, we got a week to put everything away and make this place usable, and then we gotta work.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
you got a big nut now.
Yeah, once again we started getting to work, and we somehow we're here 10 years later in the same building, and multiple changes, and I mean.
So how many guys do you have now? How many guys do you employ
today,
now?
8. We usually operate between 8 and 12. I got 8 full-time guys.
What do you consider bay-wise? How many bays do you think that handles?
I mean, if you count hoists, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hoists. We have a lot of long-term, like these long-term builds don't get a hoist, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, most days there's 30 trucks here. We usually schedule 4 to 6 per day for your in and out, whether you're doing wheels and tires or a 6-inch lift or a couple of days for a Carly kit or whatever you're doing. Some of that stuff is alignments and front end work or whatever it may be. There's usually 6 trucks scheduled a day, at least 20 here every day that are multiple day jobs. I mean, in the shop today, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 in here. And I got some more to pull in after we're done here.
Nice. And you do a little bit of everything. So you'll do everything from bolt on to custom fab to,
I would say there's like a few sides. We have, you walk in, you're going to walk into our sales floor. There's always a cool truck in there. And then a lot of displays of parts we do, and you'll meet our sales team. I usually have 1 or 2 full-time sales guys. And they're there to educate the customers on, what they want. If you got a Tacoma, why a Bilstein kit may be better than a King kit for your application, or maybe the King kit is right, or, but our approach is education. I want to educate you so you can make the right choice. Let me facilitate that choice.
Yeah.
And then from there, we kind of have our front end alignment bay, state-of-the-art alignment machine. And that, that's kind of your front end stuff. Every vehicle that goes through here obviously needs an alignment and gets an alignment. And then we kind of roll into your install bays of 4 bays of, lift kits, wheels, tires, light bars, bumpers, accessories. And what's in here today is, there's 6-inch lift on a Denali. There's a full Carly kit on a Ram with AEV bumpers. Those are like today's longer term projects.
Now, do you I know in the past you'd mentioned, do you get much into the, dealership build stuff anymore? Or?
We did. There was years that I did that dealership stuff. We were doing 30 to 50 trucks a month for dealerships, which is as cheap as you can do it. Lipstick on a pig is a 6-inch lift, wheels, tires, leather kit, typically miscellaneous other things, and kick it out the door. I had, sometimes 3 6-inch lifts on an F-150 in a day by the same guy. I mean, but you're doing it super cheap. We did a lot of that for years. That was good for me. That was good work. COVID killed that. That work all kind of went away, and I was a little worried because we were billing a lot for that stuff. I mean, not billing a lot. We were, putting on lifts for dirt cheap, and banging through this stuff and acquiring parts at no margin. But it was turning a lot of dollars, and, there's a little bit of money in that. When that work went away, it's just like pulling your hand out of a 5-gallon bucket. The other work comes in, and all of a sudden you got more time for your longer term projects and all your other customers. So we did a lot of the dealership stuff. I actually chased that pretty hard for a while and put a lot of energy into that. But I've always kind of said
Dave Smith, you were working there for a while, right? With,
Dave Smith
and during that time frame, to be fair, like they had some they sold, right? Had internal changes. They've had a lot of changes.
Well, no, actually. So there was George Gee, who I did the most of the dealership stuff with. I did some with Dave Smith for sure too. All of them around here, because all of a sudden you see a bunch of these lifted trucks being sold at another dealership, and this dealership's like, well, maybe we should lift some trucks.
They all want to know. Yes.
Yeah. And so we did a lot of that stuff, and I'd kind of this is the package. This is how it works, and so we did a lot of that. Even did some engine conversions for dealerships on JKs. I've always been, I'll pull your weeds if you pay my rate. I'll whatever fits that we can do a quality job at, I'll do. I'm also, it's very easy for me to say no. If that's not our world, like, no, I'm not going to do that. If I can't do a quality job at that, I'm not going to do it.
Yep.
But then we do all our suspension stuff. We do a lot of engine conversions, and then we still do our high-end fab size. We do, that's probably our biggest backlog.
Now, did you guys see the apex kind of during COVID, like the post-COVID? Everybody had a couple extra bucks and things were good.
Yeah, we were really busy through that. We were very, very busy. People were comically, like, I try to get to know everybody a little bit, and you want to kind of, we're all into the same thing. If you're walking into my shop, there's, we immediately have a common interest, right? This is my passion. You're interested in building a truck or a Jeep or whatever. And so we have a common passion immediately. So I like to get to know customers, and so do my team. That's what's fun about it, is we're building people's passions. And, you go to the automotive shop and you have to put brakes on your car. You're like, well, that sucks. Nobody wants to put brakes on their car, but everybody is here because they want to put a lift on or accessories or a custom build. Like, so we get the positive side of the mechanic shop type stuff, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I forgot where I was going with that.
No, I mean, I just was asking about COVID, just where,
the COVID thing was, I was really worried that we were going to get slow. And, especially here, Washington, I mean, they're going, oh, you can't drive to work. You can't go to work. You're not essential, all this stuff. And all my guys is like, guys, we are essential, because it's essential that you eat, and you eat is you get a paycheck, so that's essential enough for me. I own the building. If we need to park cars around back so it looks like we're closed, we got a year's worth of work sitting here. We don't need to answer the phones or open the front door.
Yeah, that time was crazy for everybody. The Washington went a little Western on everybody.
It was weird, and for the most part, we were all aligned on that stuff. I did lose an employee through that, and he was a good guy, but that's all right. But we own I own the building. It's my building. You're going to tell me I can't go to my building? They were talking about, like military in the street asking you where you're going, and
it was crazy up here. We were the full shutdown on this side too. Probably worse than the eastern side of the state.
But over here, it's we're kind of Idaho, we're kind of Washington. Obviously I lean more towards Idaho, but whatever. And so we just kept working, and the phone kept ringing, and we kept doing our thing, doing what we're good at. And I remember one day specifically in COVID, I was standing at the front counter, and I see 6 police officers. This is like, I put a sticker on the ground that said, stay 6 feet away. I put a thing on the door that said, you don't have to wear a mask in here, but if you want to, you can. That was as much as I did, keep your distance. It was a good exercise. We cleaned a little more than normal. Like, that's a good exercise. Let's be a little more conscious, but we just did our thing. And there's 6 cops come walking in my front door one day. I happen to look up and I see all these badged officers walking in the front, and I'm like, uh-oh, this is not good. And they come in, and immediately I notice that none of them have masks on. I'm like, They walk in, I'm like, hey guys, how's it going? They're like, we're really good. And they kind of walk up, and they actually wanted us to do a bunch of work for them. And on some of their cars, they needed some weld repair on like a SWAT truck and some other trucks. And they were all just bored, wanted to come see so I ended up giving them all shop tours. And so they all checked it out. And I'm like nervous as crap, sweating bullets, thinking I'm going to get in trouble. And when we're done, I'm like, guys, I'm dying. I got to know, like, what's up with the mask thing? What's going on? Like, I thought you guys were going to come haul me to jail because I'm not wearing a mask. And they kind of laugh, and they're like, there's no laws that say you got to wear a mask. There's nothing we can enforce. Like, you're doing it right. Keep doing what you're doing. Thanks for the help. We'll see you later. Like,
it was a crazy time. Deal. It was a crazy time for everybody, I think, during that.
For us, I always say it's weird because we don't do anything anybody needs for the most part.
Yeah.
Right. No one is required to lift their truck for the most part. Nobody is.
So how is that business now? I mean, now that we've, things were at a peak in 21, 22, they kind of come down the slope a little bit, mid 24, 23, and now, here you're on 24. Like, where are you guys now? We're
doing really good. I would say 22, 23 was chaotic, because it was so busy, and we moved a lot of dollars. I don't know that we kept any of them. Like when you get that busy, we just to keep up with it was, you have these huge growth numbers, and a lot of people will tell you that, if you're growing 30, 40, 50%, I mean, the amount of infrastructure and stuff it takes to do that is really hard.
Yeah, it takes more manpower.
Yeah, you need people, and then you need the stuff that goes along with all those people, the ability to feed all those people work, and it was good for us. We learned a lot, and we did really well through those years. And now we're much more comfortably busy. We have a backlog of work. We have great customers. We learn the jobs that we don't want to do because they're problematic or things like that. We learned where to say no, where to say yes. And we've more perfected our craft and what we're good at. And fortunately, our clientele is not the guy that says, hey, Luke, how cheap can you lift my truck?
I was going to ask, you got a lot of, your landscape there in Spokane has a lot of truck accessory stores, right? I mean, what you got? Toys for trucks?
For a little bit longer. Yep.
Yeah, I heard there's some drama there.
Yep. There's another shop in Post Falls. There's a couple of custom truck locations.
You have the 4-wheel parts stores there that have since Are they closed? Are they still open?
4-wheel parts that was part of that whole Wheel Pros, Polaris stuff. It turned into Toys for Trucks, and now the rumor is they're closing that store. And then there's a Titan truck here.
Yeah, Titan truck. That's another big one.
There's some other. There's a tire store out in Airway Heights that does dealership stuff, and they do a few customer lift kits and wheels and tires, and then there's every Les Schwab and tire
which
store
will do suspension.
That'll put on a
wheels, tires,
bottom of the barrel lift kit and tires, and so I mean there's that.
It's a lot of competition.
Yeah, there's a lot of other places to go. There's not a lot of other places, fortunately, that have the knowledge and the depth of experience that we do.
So is that how you set yourself apart from that?
Yeah, there's always someone that'll do it cheaper. I started to kind of go into this early. There's if you're with those dealership builds, if you're, John down the street will do it for $600. Well, I'll do it for $575. That is a race to the bottom, and that's a race to being out of business. And I've always thought that. And fortunately, we've been able to have the knowledge and ability to stay on the high end side of stuff. If you want an inexpensive lift kit, I can sell you a really nice inexpensive lift kit, but it doesn't have to be junk. I'm not going to sell you something that makes your truck or your Jeep not drive right, or name one of the 50 reasons. But I can sell you an inexpensive thing that still drives better than stock and rides better than stock for inexpensive price. But you got to have the knowledge to know how to do that. And your tire store isn't the one that has that knowledge, or the guy that just got hired at the place that doesn't know any better.
I think they suffer from a little more turnover, right?
Yeah,
for sure.
That's why I've always focused on the education. Somebody doesn't come in and I'm not this is what you need and sell them this. And, can I also sell you a light bar and a Switch Pros and we don't upsell at all. I'm a straight, we're going to educate you on, you're going to ask me a question, what you want, and I'm going to educate you on why this thing is different than this thing. And
so your sales guys then are more enthusiast, more educated.
Yeah. And we all work together. I don't have a line of people out my door all day. I mean, today there was 7 people in my showroom at one time, but typically you're going to come in and I want you to be able to spend an hour or so, and let's talk about your truck. And, there's 15 different brands. And another thing that's different these days is 70% of customers are fairly educated because of the internet, right?
Yeah. So I'd say almost almost 100% of customers.
Right. You still get the old guys and stuff like that don't really know, but customers aren't dumb. And the old thing of like, well, sell them the Rubicon Express track bar because that's what we have on the shelf, right? Like, I went through those years at, when we were at Central. It's like, well, why don't you sell them the Rubicon? We have that on the shelf. I'm like, well, it's got a Heim joint in it. It's going to squeak in a year. Like, we can sell them this new Terraflex one with a bushing, and it's going to last forever. So I special ordered the Terraflex one. That was always kind of my take on it. Is it's for apples to apples. This one lasts longer, does the same job. So I want to sell the better product.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. That mindset was pretty prevalent at Central, right? Again, back to the special order thing. Like,
right. Well,
sure, I could have pulled the Rubicon Express off, but I'm going to special order this one because it's better.
Yeah, I've sold 1,000 RE1600 track bars, right?
Yeah,
and they still have their place, obviously. Well, you can't get them anymore because they're gone. But there's different parts, and especially up here in the Northwest. Like, I had a guy today with a Tacoma, good customer. We built the LS powered JK for him on 40s, and he bought a Tacoma, and he wants to build a Tacoma. So he's like, all right, I want to do mid-travel and this and Kings and fabricated control arms. And I'm like, okay, what are you going to do with the truck? It's going to be like my winter truck. I want to drive it all winter. I'm like, then you don't want any of that stuff. Like, every one of those parts you just named off has a uniball or a bearing in the coilover that's going to squeak like crazy this spring. So you're going to get 4 months out of this thing, and you're going to hate it. And we're going to have to put all new bearings in it. It's going to cost you $2,500 every single year. I'm like, you probably actually want a Bilstein 8112 kit, the bypass in the rear, and maybe like a mini pack. And let's build you a kit that you take this truck,
that it's impervious
awesome.
To the Spokane winters.
Right. Yeah. Our winters here are gnarly. And so certain shocks I don't like to sell here, not because they don't ride good, but because I got to rebuild them in a year because the stuff they put on the road eats them.
Yeah, it eats everything.
And so there's different things like that. And it's, again, like, what are you going to do with it? Is it your summer only rig? Well, yeah, let's do a mid-travel kit. Right, cool. That sounds awesome. But, if you're going to drive it in the winter, that's not what we want to do. Let's make it ride way better. Like, there's lots of stuff out there that'll last and ride incredible. But I want to know what you're going to do with this truck. Why'd you buy another truck? You got 6 of them, right?
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be my winter truck. Okay, well, we're not putting long travel stuff on it, right?
Yeah.
Or at, like I left it with him, he's like, I need to go think about it. But my last thing was, I'm not talking you out of spending money. I'm explaining to you that if you want the long travel, the widened front end, all that stuff, that's fine. It's going to cost you probably $2,500 once a year to rebearing the front end. That's you don't have ball joints anymore. You got all these bearings without boots or grease, so they're going to squeak. And if that's what you want, like, I'm happy to do that. But I'm always that guy that wants to have that conversation with you.
What percentage do you think of your walk-in business like that, where you're taking the time, is the comeback customer? Is it, let's say out of 10 people, and you take the time and the education, are you getting 8 back, 6 back, 3 back?
I would have to think about that. No, I bet it's less. It's probably like 3.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people build a truck and then maybe you don't see them for 5 or 6 years because we keep trucks. Like, we all have trucks and we keep them, right?
Yep.
I used to, obviously it goes in waves. I always say our whole shop is like, one day my shop is nothing but Jeeps. There'll be 30 Jeeps in here and we're like, what the heck? The next day it's full of Fords and Chevys, and the next day it's Broncos. And then one week it's, 15 gear jobs, it all back to back, and then you won't do a gear job for a month. Like, it comes in these waves,
Yeah, no, understood. I'm just curious, because it's.
Fortunately, I don't think we push a lot of customers away. I think education goes a long way, and if someone's like, oh, that's a lot more money than I want to spend, and I can go, okay, well, what were you thinking about doing? Did you get a quote somewhere else? Yeah, well, the tire shop was going to do this lift kit. And I go, okay,
yeah,
well, like, this is the reason I don't like that specific brand. And I can dissect it online and show it to them and say, this part is prone to failure, or see how it does this. Your 4-inch lift is actually a double stacked leveling kit that's going to wear the front end out. So you're going to spend this much money for $400 more, we can do a zone kit that's going to have factory suspension geometry or something. Like we can usually meet in the middle somewhere.
I find that the best shops around the country are normally somewhat of that formula, right? Of just trying to, a little bit of reading the customer, a little bit of, very, very broad depth of product knowledge, and a little personal experience too.
Well, another thing that I think that I don't know if this maybe doesn't separate us from anybody, but it's something that I like to do that I think has been very good for us is if you walk into my showroom and you got a small question, you're probably going to get a price and availability and stuff right there. But commonly, I want to talk to you, get to know you, figure out what you want. I'm going to get your information, and it might take me a day or two to put the package together that's correct for you. If it's not something simple, right? If it's,
I've seen how you do that a little bit, where you'll put together a quote and then you call them up or email it to them, and then
we'll usually email it to them, and on the quote it'll say, hey, once you see this, shoot me a call and let's go over it.
I think all people appreciate that. It's a kind of a lost art in a way of walking through the quote and explaining it. It's just like having a house built, right? You kind of want to know the line items. Like, do I really have to go with the tile in there, or is there kind of save a couple of bucks and do something else?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
People want to know.
Yeah, and it's that with everything, and we're like as open and honest as that's. I always say that's like one of the things that's really done a really good job for us is we're so transparent, and so now we have 100% paper trail, right? I'm not, even if you come in and you just want to like buy something small, I'm still emailing you an estimate. You're still getting a fully done up invoice with everything on it that we did and all the notes. Everything is on there. It's transparent. That also helps me when you call back in a month.
Yeah.
When you call back in a month with your other truck, because we did a good job, hopefully you're stoked, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, man, you put that light on and I really like how you tied that into the high beams. Can we do that on my wife's truck? And I go, oh yeah. And I can pull up your name and I can see exactly what I did for you. And now all of a sudden I remember who you are. And, that transparency is good. It's the same thing in our long-term builds. I always say, a lot of, most of these guys they don't live here. Right. And so, they're always like, hey, can I come by on September 15th? And I go, yeah, you can come by anytime you want, but I'd prefer you didn't tell me when you came by. You just show up. Right. I like it. If you don't live here, just come by. Like, we give free shop tours every day. It's a cool place to come check out. But also, like, if I got your truck, just come by.
Yeah.
Like, we're clean and transparent. I want you to like show up and be like, oh, come check this out. The guy's under there welding on your rig right now or whatever, even if he's not, because we took a day off, like still come check it out.
So what's next in the growth curve? Where do you see things heading? Whether you as a shop owner, whether the market, where do you see things heading?
I think for Hazzard Fab, I like currently I would say we're perfecting systems and our craft of what we're good at and figuring that out. I think you're always figuring that out. I don't think, it's been we're on our 16th year. It's not like we're new to this by any means. I like getting better at what we do and, figuring out, we're always learning. We've been doing this part, but this new part came out and, oh man, it's working better in this situation. So we've been doing those. I like that evolution. The vision of this is kind of where we have it right now of this customer based, education, whether it's you want an engine conversion and you're going to, everybody calls in and wants to put a V8 in their Jeep, and I talk people out of that. I sell them all the time too. You got to have the right customer, but I'm not putting an old school small block in your CJ. That's not, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm going to educate you on why there's better options out there. We are working on a new building right now. Not for us to use as some rental property at the space here. There's some extra space. We'll put up another building. I imagine at some point we'll use some of that space for some other ideas I have. People are always like, they want me to get another location. There's lots of great markets around here that I know I could go and make money at. with our model, with our team, with our branding, and go put it over there. That I have zero desire for that.
Yeah, that's always tough and comes with a lot of risk.
And yeah, there's risk. And there's also like one thing that makes Hazzard cool is I got great people and I'm allowed to, leave and know that my customers are getting taken care of properly and stuff like that. But also we're able to bounce everything off and I'm still involved in all this stuff, which is something I really like. I'm one of the few fortunate people that was able to make my passion my job. And I still want to come here. I still wake up and I'm stoked to come to work. I'm not going to a job. I'm going to this cool thing we get to create. And if my chores are done for the day, I'm back here working on something, hopefully, not near as much as I wish I could.
How have the consolidation of some of the companies, have they affected you
it's interesting with like current stuff in the industry.
Yeah. Has that affected your purchasing or what you're purchasing? Has it affected the customer base? Has it affected,
it kind of just like, I think it kind of shakes everybody because they hear about it. It doesn't affect what I buy because I'm going to sell the best part I can until I can't get it anymore. If I think that the Falcon shock is the right one for you, I'm going to sell the Falcon shock until I can't get a Falcon shock anymore. Yep. And if that's the case, then I'll put a different shock on it. The next best thing. It hasn't really affected what we buy. It's interesting to see all these companies get bought and go out of business. I can shoot holes in those business plans of buy a successful company, pay money for it, change everything. Like that doesn't make any sense to anybody. Why, if you're buying it because it's making money, why are you changing it? I can see little changes here and there, but you think you'd want to, buy it and observe and learn and see if there's maybe a few things we can make some small tweaks here and there. But it seemed like all those, they went in there and then they just flipped everything upside down and, all of them are
a lot of investment group, venture capitalists,
right.
Different world, world.
Definitely. And they got shareholders that need to see certain things and
they need to see return, my friend. They want to return on that money. So
crazy. It's crazy. The industry is that, there's a lot of good and bad going on right now. There's some of those big businesses that are buying companies and turning them on and saying, keep doing what you're doing. If you need capital, we got it. Go, we want to see you grow. So what do you need? There's like two ways.
It's pretty rare, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And then there's the guys that are changing everything up and, you call to get a part and you get someone that knows nothing about the part. And we went through it all. There's the two groups and.
Yeah, I think there's a kind of a collective reset happening. So, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, but it allows for a lot of the smaller independents, a lot of the, younger up and coming brands to stick their foot in it. Right. Yep. I agree. Nothing's off the table. And that's an exciting time, really.
A lot of these brands that are going out right now are, they're household names and they got turned off. Legit. You think about Rubicon Express or Poison Spider, these Jeep brands that were like,
Poison crazy. Spider's coming back.
Yeah, they're coming back.
On good authority that's happening, but
yeah, I agree, and I think that's going to be good. They had some good product. I don't think they're, I think you look at like Clifton Slay, Larry McRae, Rubicon Express, or Poison Spider. It's like that's high end, cool, state of the art stuff. Yeah,
it
sells and it kind of flatlines.
I don't even know that it was high end as it was good designs and affordable.
Yeah,
I think it was just fit the time and the niche of what everybody was looking for. And culturally, it was marketed very well in that you felt part of it, right?
Yeah.
So it had that.
I guess, maybe I misspoke with high end. It was good stuff, a good design. I can, think of a few Rubicon or Poison Spider parts that I
function.
purposefully sell for specific reasons because they did a really good job in design.
Yeah, it was very functional.
Which made it like a high-end part in my eyes because it was designed very well.
But it was good value, really. It wasn't.
They did a good job.
Wasn't over-engineered, didn't have a bunch of crazy grills in it or light openings or stuff that, I mean, it was, for the most part, pretty simple.
It was robust enough to work and take a hit, and you could smash it on rocks and it didn't die. It's good stuff.
Yeah. So, look, I mean, I think we'll see where things head with the industry, but I think there's a lot of positive in some of the, recent talk about potentially lower, capital or not capital gains, lower taxes for, products made here in the U.S.
Yeah. Huge. That's going to be
whatever that means or looks like. I think that's a big thing. But I think the industry overall, you've got a Bronco in the market, a Jeep in the market. You've got, Ranger Raptors and ZR2s and Tremor Expeditions and all kinds of stuff. I think dirt and off-road is here to stay. So
a little bit that takes me back to like the Central four-wheel drive days is, I mean, the CK Chevy, those are 10-year trucks, right? The truck was more or less the same. Usually, Jeep did the same thing. They got 10 years of a TJ,
Yeah.
And nowadays, like Jeep's still doing it, but like a Chevy truck is a new truck every 4 years.
Yeah.
Right. So like if you go back in time, these big brands had to design like a new lift kit for that platform every 10 years. And now you're always designing. I mean, it was a lot harder for these companies too. And I think some of them did a really good job at managing that, but.
Yeah, well, the part of it, I think, on the P&L is what happens with an investment group is you get R&D is always cut, right?
Mm-hmm.
R&D is on a a line item that is easy to cut, not really recognizing that you really need new product to be first to market. So, but it's companies will learn, and those that do seem to manage and weather it and have grown. And
I think the reset thing is always good. I don't, I'm not part of it, so I'm happy, that I'm not the one going out of business. We're doing good things, and I think a reset is good to the point of some of these companies kind of get too much impact on the market. I feel like, and you get so big and some of them get leveraged so much that I don't mind seeing a reset here and there. Allow the smaller companies to come up.
I don't necessarily like it personally. I mean, I hate to see it only just because throughout the years I've gotten to know a lot of really good people attached to those companies. So that's probably the negativity in it, right?
Sure.
Where you've got guys that have been there, 10, 15, 20 years and given heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears, and all of a sudden they're not there. Right.
Yep,
so suddenly they've jumped into another industry or they're doing something different. So that part's hard, but I do think it does allow opportunity for smaller companies to come in and enjoy it. So, I
think the next couple of years will be interesting, and, especially get things like SEMA isn't what it used to be. COVID kind of put a hurting on that, and what it used to be to what it is now is different, and be interesting to see kind of the next 5 years, how that all gets navigated, and are those style shows is important as they used to be? Is Off-Road Expo bigger, or Sand Sports, or SEMA, or what,
I mean, our cultural business habits, I believe, have changed. So it's not just SEMA. You could look at the clothing industry. Wife's involved in the clothing industry and they have their trade shows called Magic. Well, they have Free People and all these big brands that are pulling out of their trade show. Why? Yeah. Because they have mastered during COVID Zoom calls and gatherings and a different way to market and sell product directly to their retailers. So they no longer necessarily need the expense of the trade show. Yep. I would say the automotive aftermarket's in the same camp, where those that choose not to attend SEMA have been able to market and sell their products without having to attend SEMA.
Well, that has to do with the information availability of the internet and social media and all that also.
I still think SEMA has its place, much like I think the fashion industry has its place, or, the electronics show in January. Like, I think that it's a touch point. You still need a show to touch and feel and talk about it, and an industry needs it.
And I think if you're doing it right, you're going to those things. You probably know the product. Like if I'm going to SEMA, I probably know what the new product is because it's all been talked about. But it's really about the face-to-face communication and shaking hands with your buddy and meeting. I made this new contact over here, and now I have that guy to call when I have a question about their part. And if you're not, focused on those face-to-face interactions and friendships, I think you're kind of missing the ball of those face-to-face shows because you don't get that.
But
you and I hung out a million times, but if all we ever did is talk on Zoom, it's a lot different relationship.
Agreed. But my argument is like, when's the last time you went to SEMA?
Right, in a couple of years.
See, but you still hear and learn, and that's the problem is that it's, you're always going to have this, like yourself, can't go every year, so you have kind of an ebb and tide of good shows and bad shows. And I think that, given the economy, gas prices, consumers not spending money, downturn, this is going to be probably one of the worst SEMAs to date.
Well, and not only consumers not spending money, because a consumer can't just decide to go to SEMA, right? It's more of the vendors.
Yeah, and SEMA's made an attempt to
do SEMA.
Well, SEMA's made an attempt to blur those lines a little bit with the Consumer Day and such.
Yep.
Right or wrong, I don't really have. I used to be an opinion of don't do it, but now I'm pretty much maybe have a Friday day. That's fine. I probably take more issue with kind of this mindset that SEMA takes that if you don't exhibit for 2 years, then you're banned. You can't come.
Yeah.
We don't want you. Doesn't matter if you had a rhyme or a reason or excuse or whatever it is. They don't want you to come to the show. You could potentially be turning away industry people that provide value to your show. And I'll use an example, like I'm not allowed to go to SEMA. They won't give me a badge. But I'm still allowed to supply 100 builds with tires that benefits show cars and SEMA and the industry.
Right.
So again, SEMA, I think, gets it right in some sense and gets it wrong in others. But just the sheer fact that SEMA, look, it's a big organization. Nobody does it perfect. I think they'll learn as they grow and change, and again, their board of directors changes from year to year and time to time, and I think they're going to have to adapt as well. So
I agree. I mean, it's an interesting thing, but I got this year more than ever. I have customers that are coming in like, "Oh, you going to SEMA?" I'm like, "I'm not sure if I'll be there this year or not. I haven't made a choice. Oh, we're going. We got passes or whatever. There's a lot of my clientele that are really excited to be able to go for the first time.
SEMA still has a destination point. It's still it's still a bucket list for a lot of people, right?
Usually.
Yeah, it's a bucket list for everybody.
Having a feature truck in a magazine or going to SEMA, it's all that, like, even if it's not all it cracked up to be, it's still something you've been dreaming about.
Yeah, it's still a dream. It's still the Mecca. It's still where everybody wants to be and where you want to go. So I think they'll be fine. They'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. And you also have all these other shows. You got King of the Hammers is a SEMA-like show. There's so many vendors there, and but different style of destination. But you have Off-Road Expo and Sandsport Super Show and Jeep Beach and Easter Jeep Safari, and I mean, there's like so many of them now.
And to be honest, a lot of those have really suffered because of consolidation of companies, right?
Agreed.
So it used to be you had Fabtech had a semi, you had Warren had a big booth, you had Icon had a big booth, right? Everybody had a big booth. Well, now you just have one semi with 7 brands attached.
Yep.
So that means less real estate for the show, right? Less revenue, but it also means less value to the consumer. Because now I pay $25.
Fabtech brings their semi, they bring a bunch of trucks and a huge display. But if the Fabtech semi is also the Warren semi, which is Factor 55,
well, the consumer feels
one little
cheated.
tiny thing. Yeah.
Consumer still, his ticket didn't become $10. It's still $20 to get in, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, whatever.
So you still are kind of fighting that with, a show that's meant for consumer that the value proposition to the consumer for spending $20 to get in is going to see all these brands.
And it may also give an opportunity for some of the other brands to step up and, have the smaller company have a way bigger display and look bigger than Warren Winch. This other winch looks bigger.
And in any other given year, I'd say we'd see more of that, but I just don't feel like that's not happening today based on Off-Road Expo,
and we also have an election year, which is
Sand Sports,
a bunch of people spooked. I think that's going to play into it a lot.
Yeah. People just hanging on to the dineros.
Yeah. And I fortunately haven't seen too much of that, but I can, everybody that walks into my shop, something's getting brought up about politics.
It's a daily conversation around the country, I think, for everybody.
Yeah.
So, no matter what side of the red or blue you're on, I mean, it's a daily conversation, and I think people, are just ready for the next 20 days for it to be over.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Yeah.
All good. Well, Luke, we've been on now a little over an hour and 40 minutes, if you can believe that. It goes quick, but we'll do this again. Yeah, we'll do this again. Maybe we'll pick the top three industry topics, and we'll circle back and have a conversation.
Yeah, let's dissect some stuff. I'd love to talk about it and give you my my reflections on it, or my look on it from my side of things. And you had a different outtake on a lot of them also, which would be interesting conversations for sure.
Yeah, we'll circle back. But I appreciate you giving all the listeners just kind of the rundown of who, what, why, and where you came from. I always have a question: who is your most influential helper? Who gave you the most, throughout this 16-year journey? Who gave you, the most inspiration? Was it, your dad, your uncle? Was it your, who's helped you along the way, giving you that guidance, kind of?
I would be foolish to say one person, because I had so much help, but that kind of circle I had between family and industry people that I've met along the way, and like my accountant, who kind of pushed me to do things that were out of my comfort zone. I had a really good kind of tight knit group of people that had my best interests in mind, and I was able to talk to them and not have just one person say, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times didn't like my ideas and tried to talk me out of it, and I did them anyways.
Yeah, fair enough.
I had really good mentors in that way.
Collective group. We'll go with that. Collective group.
I'd say a collective group for sure. And collective or eclectic. Yeah.
Yeah, both. Well, awesome. Yeah. Well, we will circle back and do this again. Once again, Luke Shuman, owner, CEO, president, floor sweeper of Hazzard Fabworx, does a little bit of everything out there. Again, Luke, I appreciate our friendship. We've known each other for quite some time now. You've helped us out on Nitto builds. You've done some stuff with us over the years with building some vehicles for giveaway, for display, for usage. Like, we always appreciate your help on those builds. And I always recommend, in my little circle, if you need something done, reach out to Luke. He's happy to get her done, and he does a good job at it. So
I appreciate that. And like I said, I'm happy to help with any of that stuff. And I don't know, it's a different thing we do here. I think there's other places around that do it similar to us, and there's probably a few of us around the country, and we're happy to be a part and have industry people and inside knowledge on some of this stuff with people like yourself. And it's been a lot of fun, and we still have a bunch of enthusiasts getting to do enthusiast stuff all day long.
That's what it's all about.
Pretty
having
stoked
fun.
To be
It's a short window we're in, so have some fun, enjoy life, and make great friends. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, man. And thank you very much. We'll talk again soon.
All right, Luke, take care. Once again, Luke Shuman, and we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.